Well, let me ask you something. I got two speeches prepared. I got one speech that'll tell you what you want to hear. I got another speech that'll tell you what you need to hear. So my question to you is, which one do you want to hear? Do you want to hear what you want to hear? Do you want to hear what you need to hear? Y'all sound kind of indecisive.
Need.
Is it what you want to hear or what you need to hear? Need to hear. See, we always say that. We always say that, you know, I want to hear what I need to hear. But see, the problem with that is, included with that is some truth. And how many of you know truth is a hard pill to swallow? How many of you know that there's a difference between truth and agreement? Anybody? Anybody here think truth and agreement is the same thing? Well, of course not. Truth and agreement are not the same thing. So often we look for agreement because it's the easy way. It's easy for me to walk up to you and say, yeah, brother, you and me agree. We're together on this. But see, the problem is that in only seeking truth, we don't develop greater understanding. See, the Bible says, in getting wisdom, it says also get understanding. It doesn't say get agreement, does it? It says get understanding. Now, I stand before you today as an elected official, as a member of the Roble Elementary School Board, the only predominantly African-American school board in Sacramento County. The only one. I also stand before you as a candidate for California State Assembly in the 5th Assembly District. I also stand before you as a Republican, as a person who has stood for the last 15 years what I consider to be values that are consistent with our values in the best interest of our community. Now I know what you're saying. You're saying, wait a minute. I thought he was going to talk about truth. No, see, you were looking for agreement. If you were expecting me to stand here and talk about truth, then you were looking for agreement. See, if there's one thing that we've learned from this last year, from this last election, is that when we are engaged, when we are involved, we can move mountains. Amen? When we choose to be involved in a process, we make a difference. But let's look at where we stand a year later. Where we stand a year later, our economy is in worse condition. Our children are still failing in schools. Our schools are still failing our children. Oh my goodness. Unemployment is still highest amongst African Americans. Prison rates is still highest amongst African Americans. Unemployment is still highest amongst African Americans. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is it because we are seeking the truth or we are seeking agreement? See, the interesting thing about all of those things that I'm talking about is, you look at our communities, whether it's Sacramento, whether it's the state legislature, one party to which we have been fully and utterly committed has been running things here in the Sacramento Capitol for over 50 years. Once again, I'm not asking you for agreement with you. What I'm asking for is to seek truth. One of the things I really appreciate about Betty, about Gloria, about the NAACP and this leadership is they've always sought to bring both sides to the table. Let me ask you here, how many of you here supported President Obama? Show my clap your hand. Amen. Okay, now let me ask you this. How many of you went to President Obama's website or read his literature in terms of what it was he wanted to do? Slightly fewer people. How many of you here went to John McCain's website? How many of you read his policy papers in terms of what he wanted to do? Why not? These are the two men who are running for the most powerful office, the most powerful position in the world. Say Jesus. The most powerful position in the world, and we don't want to find out what both of them stand for, what both of them want to do. Were we looking for truth or were we looking for agreement? See, truth is a hard thing. Truth requires conflict. It requires disagreement. There's nothing wrong with conflict. Conflict, if we can come together in a constructive way, it helps us to build knowledge. When we can disagree and we can share the facts, we can both leave with a greater understanding. When you get both sides, that's called education. But when you only get one side, that's called indoctrination. How many of you know that indoctrination is dangerous? Okay, so one person believes that indoctrination is dangerous. Let me just tell you something. It was indoctrination that would eventually lead to slavery, to the devaluation of the African people. It was indoctrination that allowed them to go into schools, to go into churches, to go to people and tell them that you were less than human, so it was okay to enslave you. It was okay to take away your rights. That was indoctrination. It was indoctrination that led people into the gas chambers in Auschwitz. Because they only sat there, they only listened to one side, once again, denigrating and focusing on the fact, talking about these people are less than human. That's indoctrination. Once again, I'm not talking about agreement. I'm not asking that you agree with me. I'm asking for truth. And see, we can only come to truth if we hear both sides. If we get all of the information through conflict, constructive conflict, debate, discussion. When we come to that point, we can talk about the issues, and then we can come up with a real solution to education, a real solution to unemployment, a real solution to recidivism. Because let me tell you this is what I know. I will not tell you that the Republican Party has the answer to every problem affecting the African American community. I know that. But I also know this. I know that the Democratic Party does not have that answer either. Because they've been running things here in this building for the last 15 years, and nothing has changed, has it? Nothing has changed. See, we talk about our failing schools, yet we put the same people in charge of our schools. There was someone who said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. See, conflict is willing to say, I'm willing to try something different. I'm willing to at least take a look at something different. I'm willing to take an objective look at what's going on. I'm willing to go through conflict in order to arrive at a greater understanding. We've gone through a lot of rough times as a people. We're going through a rough time right now as a nation. But see, I believe it's also a time of great opportunity. Because, you know, I always like to, I will tell you, it's funny, you know, when they make a sword, the first thing they do is they take the raw metal, right? They take that raw metal, and the first thing they do is they melt it down. They subject it to extreme heat. They make it so hot that all the impurities rise to the top, that nothing that is impure can stand. We've gone through that sort of fire, through slavery, through Jim Crow. We've gone through that. And as a result of that, as impurities are then removed, what's the first thing they do? Then it cools down a little bit. Then what do? They heat it up again. And then they start to pound it. They start to pound it and start to pound it into a form where it can be used. But then it's not done. That pounding is not easy. That pound's hurt. They subject it to heat, and then they pound it. They pound it, and they pound it some more. Then they cool it off. And then they take the sharpening. See, folks, we are in a position, I believe, right now where that sharpening can take place. We have survived the unsurvivable. We exist despite all that has been done to us as a people. We are now in a position where we can come to learn and take that to the next level. We've come to learn that activism makes a difference. That being active makes a difference. That being involved makes a difference. But the next step isn't just activism, but it's being effective. It's a question of whether or not we're willing to go against what we want to hear and are willing to listen to what we need to hear. My prayer, once again, is not for agreement. My prayer is never for agreement. My prayer is for understanding. As the word says, get wisdom, and all that getting, get understanding. And see, when you get understanding, then I believe we will be in agreement. We may not always support the same party. We may not always support the same candidate. We may not always be on the same side of every issue. But what we will be able to do is understand. I'll understand why you stand where you stand. And you'll understand why I stand where I stand. And I believe that if we truly believe in equal equality, we need to hold each and every elected official to the same standard. Where do you stand on our issues? What have you done to advance our cause? I don't care if they're Republican, Democrat. I don't care if they're black, white, Chinese, Latino. I don't care. We need to hold them to the same standard. As a member of this California legislature, I will hold the Republican Party to that standard. I will hold the Democratic Party to that standard. I will hold our governor to that standard. I will hold the Black Caucus to that standard. The Latino Caucus to that standard. The Senate Caucus to that standard. The question I have for you are you going to give me the opportunity to be held to that standard? Thank you.